Hi guys, Viking Reefing here. It's been quite some time, hasn't it? If you saw my latest video where I went over my current struggles with motivation in reefing, or if you saw my last Instagram post where I said that I would be taking a break from social media over like a month or something, like the month of July. Well, the basic idea was that I would have a very chilled out and relaxed life in terms of reefing and just recharge my batteries and really hit the ground running when autumn hit again. Well, anything but that happened, unfortunately. To be honest, this summer, at least in terms of reefing, has been absolutely freaking horrid. I've never had such a lousy time when it came to reefing like I've had during the last couple of months. Multitude of factors which have been playing a part, but the absolutely worst thing that happened during the summer is that I've lost a substantial amount of my fish stock. So what actually transpired and the actual turn of events was that I started noticing that some of my fish in both my tanks started looking a bit ragged, fins wasn't really looking all that well. Like if you know how a healthy fish's slime coat looks like, well, I could see on some of my fish that their slime coats were kind of like semi-milky, like a tinge of gray in them. I started like doing water changes and stuff and feeding more and doing everything I could. I thought that there was like something environmental going on which affected them, since in truth I hadn't been all that diligent with water changes for like the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks perhaps. So I figured that it had something to do with that. But after a few weeks of that, I still didn't see any improvement in the fish. Appetite was still good for the most part, and they were behaving fairly normal. But what then happened was that I found my striped pipefish stuck in one of the Neros of my Nios tank. I wasn't too alarmed about that. I kind of figured, okay, that's just really unlucky. He somehow managed to poke his snout into it and just got caught. So I didn't really pay too much mind to that. I did have a fairly substantial amount of small fish in both tanks. I had like Mandarin gobies in both tanks. I had a bunch of like little gobies and wrastles and stuff like that. And next thing I knew, I started noticing that some of them had went missing. I do have lids on both tanks, but I would started searching about to see if they had jumped out or something, but I still couldn't find them. So that kind of got me worried, like what's actually going on here? And at that point, there were no real physical signs on my fish, apart from like the kind of weird slime coats on some of them, and some like ragged looks to their fins on like a couple of the angel fish. But yeah, that got me quite worried when I started noticing that fish are actually starting to disappear without a trace. Since a small little fish, a couple of centimeters, if it dies, I mean, it easily gets lost in a big system like this. What then happened, which really sent me into panic mode, was that my majestic or Navarchus angel fish showed up dead one morning. And then I really realized that, oh crap, I have a problem. Still no visible signs at that point, apart from the ones that I've already told you about. But yeah, then I got really worried. Started doing massive water changes, changed out my carbon and everything I could think of, because I still thought there was something like environmental going on. Give it like a couple of more weeks and I see spots showing up on my melon butterfly fish, my Trifasciatus butterfly fish in the Nios tank. So I kind of figured, okay, this looks like ick. That's not the end of the world. I've never lost a fish to ick really in all my years in reefing. So I just figured that was a consequence of everything else that was going on, that they kind of got stressed from that. So I didn't really panic at that point either. It did look like ick, so they just had a couple of spots on it. Give it a couple of more days and I start seeing these spots on most of the fish in my tank. Like, okay, what's going on here? I've never had any big outbreaks of ick before. Generally, when you have a healthy, mature reef tank, outbreaks of ick is really a problem, in my opinion at least. I do also run ozone and a very big UV. So I really couldn't wrap my head around what was going on at this point. But I figured out, okay, we have an issue connected to something environmental, and like the immune system of the fish has gone down, and that's why I have an outbreak of ick, because I did know that I did have ick in my tank. I've managed it for, and I've always managed ick in my tanks. That's never been an issue, like I said. But I started thinking like, okay, so there's something environmental going on and I have this ick outbreak as well. Might as well get in front of the ick outbreak. So I changed out my UV bulbs, which weren't all that old, and I cleaned out my ozone generator to make sure that that was functioning a-okay. And for like the next, I would say, 2 weeks, it was kind of stable. I didn't lose any fish. And overnight it just went wham! And all the fish in my tank, they were like covered. That's when I realized what was going on. This wasn't ick whatsoever. Apparently, I had been managing velvet in my system. I didn't add any new fish for quite some time, so it wasn't like brought in with the latest edition. And I had really no clue that you could manage velvet. So it probably had been in my system for quite some time. But I still couldn't figure out why I got this velvet outbreak now. Well, I got my answer fairly quickly. I had been doing some gardening. I had a decent sized cut on my finger, and I did something in my tank, I think like a coral or something had fallen over. Well, I stick my hand down there and I feel that I'm getting a shock, a very slight or fairly slight tingling, which I hadn't noticed before. Since normally if you just have some stray voltage, you don't really feel it, but because your skin isolates you from it, but if you have a cut, it easily penetrates. So then I kind of figured, okay, I have stray voltage coming from somewhere. So that's probably the cause of the velvet outbreak. I'd probably been managing it for quite some time, but the fish got really stressed due to the stray voltage, and that was just a domino effect. So when the actual outbreak happened, it just kept snowballing. I found a reason for the stray voltage. I had a cheap, shitty Yaba pump powering my UV sterilizer. And that thing started giving out the stray voltage. I did have to do some detective work to find that out. I have I think it's called a multimeter, at least in Swedish. Hopefully that's the same term in English. And I went around and unplugged each and every piece of equipment that was in contact with water. And finally I found out, okay, this thing that's spitting out voltage. So it was basically all downhill from there. But when I did realize that I was dealing with velvet, I went like, oh god, I have no clue how to do this. I do have a quarantine tank. Sorry, my daughter is, I think she's taking a bath or something, if you can hear her. I'm not wearing a external microphone, so the audio might be a little bit shittier than it usually is. I got a new iPhone and I don't have one of those USB-C ports for my microphone, so I have to fix that. But anyways, so I kind of start panicking. Like, okay, what do I do? I do have a quarantine tank. I do have access to chloroquine phosphate, for example, which does treat the velvet. But the thing was that, I mean, a 200-liter quarantine tank with the amount of fish and the size of the fish that I have, it just wasn't feasible to just jam everything in there. And trying to catch out all the fish in a tank such as this would require me to just tear everything down. So I couldn't really see a reasonable path to me actually getting all the fish out. I did read some research papers and talked to some industry friends about this, and what some people have had good success with is dosing hydrogen peroxide in your tank, which kind of kills off the ick. There is a regimen on Humble Fish's forum on how to do this, so I started following that. Side note is that hydrogen peroxide is apparently very easy to get in the States. Here in Sweden it was a pain in the ass. I can't just go to the grocery store and get it. I had to order it online, and Amazon really screwed me on this one because they sent like pomegranate powder or something the first go around instead of hydrogen peroxide. But when I finally got it, I think I used 9% hydrogen peroxide. I hooked it up on a doser and started dosing it at night, and very close to when the lights come on, because that's apparently when the velvet, is it tomons, when they release from the fish and start like swimming up to the light. So, and that's when you have your best chance of really killing them off with the hydrogen peroxide. Didn't see much of a difference initially with the dose that was recommended. I kept dosing it, and I started actually losing fish at this point. So the first fish that died was my Trifasciatus butterfly, which was fucking, that was just awful. I mean, I worked so hard with that fish to get it to the point where it was eating freaking flake food, for Christ's sake. So that guy croaked. Then it just went really south really quickly. My Embroider Angel was probably next on the chopping block. I lost basically all my Amphias. I have one Amphias left, one of my Bimaculatus Amphias. So I was like, okay, I need to really do something. So I started increasing the dose of hydrogen peroxide. I started increasing it incrementally, almost like every other day or something. The problem with that was that I started getting issues with my corals. So I wiped out a substantial amount of corals. No LPS or softies, but I've lost several of my big SPS colonies due to the overuse of hydrogen peroxide. And what happened next was probably the most devastating blow of this entire freaking shit show. I lost my Achilles tang. That was really devastating. I've had that guy for now, I believe, 5 or 6 years. It was an Hawaiian Achilles tang, and they look a hell of a lot better than the ones that are coming out of Tahiti nowadays. And what really bugs me is that guy actually had looked to be kind of improving the last couple of days before I found him dead one morning. So I was actually hopeful that he would actually pull through, because I had seen that some other fish started to improve as well. But yeah, lost my Achilles tang, and yeah, that really did it in for me. I was about ready to just take a hammer to this tank at that point, the big one at least. but that was actually the last fish that I lost, and I think he croaked about 2 weeks ago or something like that. So right now I can't see any traces of the velvet on any of my fish. Everyone is seeming to be improving. The torn fins are healing, and their slime coat is looking normal. Appetite has returned, and everything has started to look fairly good. What I'm very happy about is that I didn't lose my Regal Angel. That's probably, apart from my clown, which is still here as well, is probably the fish I've had for the longest time. I actually brought that guy over from our last house to this house. So in terms of like the kill counts, I've lost my Achilles tank, Emperor Angelfish, Majestic Angel, Melon Butterfly, one of the orange spotted filefish, and the one that's still here is starting to look better, but he was looking on death's door for a bit. I think I've lost about 6 Antheus from different species. I also lost my black cat basslet, my truncatus tang, the 2 spotted goby, all my pipefish and Nios tank, 2 mandarins, some wrasses, but most of them pulled through. And a bunch of other small fish that I used to have in this tank. So yeah, this was an absolutely devastating couple of months for me. Up until, I'd say, a week ago, I was kind of dead set on shutting the big tank down. I'm still not sure what I'll be doing with the big tank. I have considered perhaps shutting that down and replacing it with a Nios Opus 440, because I do really like my smaller Nios tank, and just keep SPS and a couple of angelfish and stuff like that in that tank. Quite sure yet on what I'll be doing here. I did have a thought that now that I've lost my Achilles, which I really did love that fish, but he was also quite the asshole and wouldn't allow me to add a Moorish idol to my system. But I have been thinking about perhaps adding a new Moorish idol and a similar largest butterfly to this big tank, and that thought kind of perked me up and gave me some motivation to keep the big tank going. But I won't do anything drastic for like the coming month or something. I really just have to get my head on straight and see what I really want to do. I'm not a quitter whatsoever, even though this is basically the worst thing that's ever happened to me in the reefing hobby. I am committed to this hobby, and this won't break me. I didn't script this video in any way, so I just sat down and hit record. So I guess I've probably been rambling on a bit here, but I thought you guys would probably be interested in knowing what I've been up to since I haven't been around for the last couple of months, and some of you guys are quite interested in the goings on with my reefing life, so I thought you deserved an update. I'll definitely continue on both YouTube and Instagram. I'll be easing my way back into posting on Instagram as well. And yeah, if you aren't subscribed to this channel, I would advise you to do so if you're interested in my coming journey. It's either going to be the rebuild of my 1000 liter tank or a new build. So yeah, should be interesting regardless of what happens. If you've stuck around this long, well, thank you. I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button. It kind of helps me and the algorithm and spreads the video around. So yeah, be safe, happy reefing, and have a good one. Bye. Oy.